Greetings and God's peace be with you. My name is Kristofer Lindh-Payne, and I am one of the co-rectors at St. Francis Episcopal Parish and Community Center. It's a delight to talk with you in this fifth week of Lent as Holy Week draws close. Over the weekend, I had a chance to take both my daughter and our dog on a walk on an area in Catonsville where we live. It's a trail that I have walked and run many times before over decades, and I like it. It's a short little stretch. You walk past some apartments and a nursing home and one of the schools that I grew up going to. But when we were walking along this past week, my senses were assaulted by something that was deeply disturbing. There's a really beautiful mural that had been painted in the late 90s that was an artistic rendition of what the trolley trail that used to run alongside this area and some of the stores might have looked like, 100 years ago. I don't remember what time period they're trying to capture. But over decades, there's been lots of acts of vandalism on this beautiful piece of art. The one that I saw over the weekend was as disturbed as I've ever been, and it wasn't me that saw it first, but it was my 8-year-old daughter. She saw it, and she saw the F word, and she knew that that was she knew that that was a bad word, not one that she was allowed to say. She didn't know the words that came after, and I'm really glad that she didn't, because of the hatred, the vitriol that is embedded in them and intended in them. It spoke of hatred for transgender people, and it was a real violent expression of bigotry, just some of the worst of what people say to one another, and I'm upset about it. I want you to be upset about it too. This world that we live in is broken and is a mess. And I'd like to believe that the church stands on the side of those that are oppressed, those that are that feel discriminated against. And there are ways in which we do. For example, I'm really proud that in our House of Bishops meeting just last week, or maybe it was 2 weeks ago now, that they released a statement. Many statements were released, but this one related to support for people that were transgender. I'd like to share with you just a little bit of the language that was included in this. So the gathering took place down in Texas at Camp Allen, and it said, "We, the bishops of the Episcopal Church, voice our love and continued support for all persons who identify as transgender or non-binary and their families. We decry legislative initiatives and governmental actions targeting trans children and their families. We urge all in our church to create safe spaces and shield all people from harassment based on gender identity." Well, as I saw this act of vandalism, this act of hatred, written out in bright red spray paint, I feel a need to speak against that, to do something about that. And I don't know how it makes you feel, but I hope that we can talk about that we can engage together in works of justice and love that create safe spaces for all people, but particularly those that feel most oppressed. The church, as you likely know, falls short also, and there are ways around gender expression and sexual orientation that we have sinned and we've fallen short. And I also am grateful for the ways that I see the Episcopal Church rising to the occasion in stepping forward in faith and in justice to speak on behalf of those whose voices are often silenced. When I think about our baptismal covenant, the call to love our neighbor as ourselves, to seek and serve Christ in one another, to strive for justice and peace, and to respect the dignity of every human being, I think about the ways that we as a parish and community center are called to do that, the ways in which the wider church is called to do that, the ways in which I, as a human being and a member of a family, am called to do that, the witness that I give, and the things that I choose to speak about, speak against, the works of justice and change that I seek to contribute to, that bring about God's love and bring wholeness into this world. I was pondering the readings for the day, and both the one that comes from the Hebrew Bible as well as in the Gospel, they're both so powerful, and the link is available there, but I'm only going to speak to one today because I'm hoping to make time to speak to the other sometime soon. But in John's Gospel account, it's likely a story you know of the scribes and the Pharisees bringing before Jesus a woman that had committed adultery, or so they say, and they wanted her to be stoned. And Jesus listened, and he knelt down, and he started to draw with his finger on the ground. And then he stood up, and he called them out on their hypocrisy, on their sin, and invited them to look within themselves around that. And when everyone dispersed from the crowd and no one was left to condemn him, he said, "So too, I do not condemn you. Go and sin no more." I think about this not just, not in the way that it might seem that the way that the church historically has called people that are LGBTQ plus folks, called them sinful. Our Episcopal Church has really grown a lot in that and repented from a lot of that sin ourselves, and to really see how all people are created in the image and likeness of God is changing us. I know that it's changing me in the way that I see God and see beyond this binary expression of male or female, to see God beyond gender. It's not that we can't speak in those terms, but to look beyond that. And I think the relationships that I've had with members of my family, my friends, and our church community, both at St. Francis and the wider church community, the witness and love that I've experienced from transgender children of God, that have taught me so much about who God is, and how we're called to love, and how we're called to be in community together. It's challenged me to let go of things that I think and believe that really are broken and really not of God, and to embrace new and different ways of being that are much more in line with the reign of God, with the love of Christ, with what it means to seek and serve Christ in one another, and to strive for justice and peace, to respect the dignity, again, of every human being. Well, I'm not going to post a picture of the hate that I saw there in Catonsville. I am going to post a piece of graffiti that I don't know the history of, but it actually it expresses our baptismal covenant, and so I'm going to write over that hatred narrative, and call us to do more, to do better. I think about how last week was an International Day of Transgender Visibility. And I think about the way in which our bishops have been called to act, the way they call us to act. I also think about the context that I live in here in Catonsville. It's 21228 zip code, and all of the bumper stickers that say no hate in 21228. There are lots of people that want to prove that wrong, that really want to, that really choose hate instead of love. And in the midst of that, Jesus shows us that we have choices to make, choices that are not grounded in sin, in violence, in hatred of other, but in radical acts of love that call us to be a community, a whole community that sees that all children of God are made in God's image and likeness. Thanks for listening. Thanks for being a part of this community. I hope to have further conversation with you about this. But I do challenge you to to read the scriptures and to pray with them and to engage in the traditions of our church, to engage with our leaders, to think and pray about how God is calling us to embody the love of Christ, to live into our baptisms, and to be about justice, peace, and love. Thanks for listening, and until next time, Christ's peace be with you.